The mayor's wife had a reputation that made people uneasy. Known around town for her sharp tongue and air of superiority, she never hesitated to remind others of her status. Being the mayor's wife gave her confidence that almost no one would challenge her, no matter how she behaved. She often looked down on people she considered beneath her, like service workers and even other residents of the town who weren't important enough. And because the mayor rarely said anything to correct her, her behavior just seemed to get worse over time. One sunny afternoon, she decided to go shopping at an upscale store in town. Driving her sleek, expensive car, she felt a little thrill pulling into the parking lot. As usual, she wasn't about to waste time looking for an open spot like everyone else. Without a second thought, she swung her car into a space clearly marked as reserved for people with disabilities. To her, it was just a minor inconvenience. Rules like these didn't apply to someone like her. Not long after she parked, a young store employee stepped outside and, seeing her car in the handicap spot, approached her politely. The employee, feeling a bit nervous, kindly asked if she could park in a regular spot so that people who needed the space could use it. But the mayor's wife only rolled her eyes, dismissing him entirely. With a cold glance, she started in on her usual tirade, making a loud point of how some people are lazy and just don't understand how the world works. She emphasized her point by mentioning that she was, in fact, the mayor's wife, a reminder that she expected her status to silence anyone who dared to question her actions. But to her surprise, things didn't go as planned. Another shopper who had overheard the exchange decided to call the police, feeling that her blatant disregard for the rules had gone too far. Within minutes, a police car arrived, and out of it stepped an officer who was known in the community for being fair, straightforward, and well-respected. Unlike many people in town who might have turned a blind eye to her behavior, he was there to do his job, and he took that seriously. The mayor's wife, however, didn't see this officer's arrival as a concern. In her mind, she was certain that once he recognized her, he'd simply let her off with a warning, or even better, let her off entirely. After all, she was no ordinary citizen. But this officer was not interested in her titles or connections. He saw only that she had broken a clear rule and was causing a scene that made other people uncomfortable. As he approached her car, she immediately tried to take control of the situation, looking him up and down as if judging whether he was worthy of her time. She offered a brief, condescending smile, clearly expecting him to let her off easily. But he stayed calm and politely asked her to explain why she'd chosen to park in a space reserved for people with disabilities. Her response was almost automatic. She leaned in, lowered her voice as though sharing a secret, and told him she was the mayor's wife, as though that would change the officer's mind. But he didn't react as she expected. Instead, he simply and firmly repeated the rule about handicapped spaces, explaining that the law applies to everyone, regardless of who they are. Now this response didn't sit well with her at all. She looked at him, almost laughing, and then started questioning his decision, suggesting that he might be targeting her. As her voice grew louder, people around began noticing, a small crowd gathering, some even recording on their phones. She was quickly realizing that things were spiraling out of her control. In the face of her growing anger and indignation, the officer remained calm and professional, politely reminding her of her responsibility to follow the rules. His patience and calmness seemed only to fuel her irritation, and as she continued her tirade, it became clear to everyone watching that this time, her status wasn't going to protect her from the consequences. The officer continued to handle the situation calmly, even though the mayor's wife was becoming increasingly frustrated. She could barely stand that this police officer, someone she saw as beneath her, was talking to her as if she were just like anyone else. It was clear she had always expected people to treat her differently because of her position. Her voice was sharp, her words filled with indignation as she looked around, almost as if she expected someone to come to her aid. But this time, the bystanders weren't giving her the support she wanted. Instead, they watched, some shaking their heads, others quietly recording the scene. Seeing that the crowd wasn't on her side, she tried a different approach. She took out her phone and began to call her husband, the mayor, thinking that he could fix this quickly. She expected him to answer immediately and to put the officer in his place with a few words. After all, he had always managed to shield her from consequences in the past. But today, her call went unanswered. She looked at the phone, annoyed and slightly surprised. She tried calling again, but still no answer. It was an uncomfortable feeling, realizing she was alone in this moment, without anyone to back her up. Seeing her unsuccessful calls, the officer calmly continued with his work. He told her that he would have to issue her a ticket for parking in a handicapped space without the proper permit. For a moment, she was speechless, almost in disbelief that he would actually go through with it. Her shock quickly turned into anger. She looked at him, her eyes narrowing, and said that he would regret this, that he had no idea who he was dealing with. She was used to intimidating people into getting what she wanted, and this time she fully expected the same outcome. But the officer simply listened, unbothered by her threats. He was careful with his words, explaining that the law didn't change based on someone's social status. His even tone made it clear that he wasn't interested in playing favorites, something she was not used to at all. Every word he spoke seemed to remind her, and everyone watching, that she was not above the rules that others followed every day. Her frustration boiled over, and she reached for the ticket he had just written, attempting to snatch it from his hand. She was acting out of desperation, as if somehow tearing up the ticket would make everything go away. But the officer, still professional and calm, held onto the ticket and reminded her that this kind of behavior could only make matters worse. He even suggested she take a moment to calm down, adding that he was willing to discuss things politely if she wished. At that moment, it was clear that the crowd's sympathies were fully with the officer. People who had been watching quietly began to speak up. Some expressed their disapproval of her behavior, others commended the officer's patience. It was a powerful shift that caught her off guard. The support she thought she'd have from the public had turned against her, and now even the people she believed were below her were openly disagreeing with her actions. Realizing that she was not going to get her way this time, she fell silent, though it was clear she was still fuming inside. Her attempts to intimidate the officer had failed completely, and her calls to her husband had gone unanswered. She was alone in front of a crowd that no longer admired her, and an officer who was determined to uphold the law. She finally seemed to understand that, no matter who she was, there would be consequences. The officer handed her the ticket, and in a calm voice, told her that he hoped she would respect the law going forward. She took the ticket without a word, her pride clearly bruised. This was a moment she hadn't expected, a reminder that her influence didn't make her immune from accountability. She looked around one last time, seeing the onlookers who had silently cheered for the officer, and walked back to her car, finally realizing that, for once, she couldn't simply have her way. After the officer issued the ticket, the mayor's wife took a deep breath and walked back to her car, feeling humiliated. Her mind raced as she sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel tightly. She couldn't believe how quickly things had turned against her. Just moments ago, she'd have been full of confidence, expecting everyone to obey her wishes because of her status. But now, she felt like a nobody, facing the consequences of her actions. As she sat there, she glanced in the rearview mirror at the crowd that had gathered. Many of the faces she saw were filled with expressions of disbelief and disapproval. She had always thought people admired her, but now it was clear that most were disgusted by her behavior. The embarrassment washed over her like a cold wave. She felt exposed, as if everyone could see right through her carefully crafted image of superiority. People had started to take videos and photos, sharing her moment of disgrace on social media. She could already imagine the headlines. Mayor's wife thinks she's above the law, or entitled behavior caught on camera. The thought made her stomach churn. How could this have happened? She had always been able to manipulate situations to her advantage, but this time, she had met someone who wouldn't back down. Meanwhile, the officer had turned back to his patrol car, aware of the crowd's reaction and relieved to see that he had stood his ground. He had dealt with situations like this before, but this one felt different. He believed in fairness and justice, and seeing the crowd support him made him feel proud of the work he did. He felt that he was not just enforcing the law, but also sending a message about respect and accountability. As the mayor's wife drove away, she replayed the incident in her mind. The officer's calm demeanor had thrown her off balance. She had expected him to crumble under her pressure, but he had done the opposite. He stood firm, showing her that his job was not about power, but about serving the community. That realization stung deeply. She had always thought of herself as someone who was untouchable, but now she understood that everyone, including her, had to face the consequences of their actions. In the days that followed, the incident didn't fade away. Instead, it became the talk of the town. Friends and neighbors started sharing their opinions about what had happened. Some expressed support for the officer, praising him for doing his job. Others talked about the mayor's wife in negative terms, pointing out her long history of arrogance and entitlement. The situation had put her on the defensive, and she was starting to feel isolated. At home, she tried to put on a brave face for her husband, but the mayor could see that she was upset. He had seen the footage circulating on social media and couldn't help but feel disappointed in her behavior. He had always tried to protect her from public scrutiny, but this time, he couldn't shield her from the consequences of her actions. Sitting at the dinner table, he finally brought it up. "You know, what happened was really unfortunate. I think you need to apologize." She looked at him, disbelief washing over her. "Apologize? To whom? To that officer? I don't know of him anything." Her voice was sharp, but deep down, she could feel a sense of dread creeping in. The mayor took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "You do owe him something. You can't just treat people like they are less than you. This town will remember this. You need to take responsibility." For a moment, she sat in silence, anger and frustration swirling inside her. She hated the idea of admitting she was wrong, especially to a person she felt was beneath her. But as she looked at her husband, she realized he was right. The longer she fought it, the worse it would get. The reality was that she had lost the support of the community, and no amount of pride would change that. Finally, she nodded slowly, accepting that she would need to face the consequences. Maybe it was time to rethink her attitude, not just for her own sake, but for the sake of her husband and their standing in the community. In the end, she realized that everyone deserved respect, no matter their background or position. It was a tough lesson to learn, but perhaps it was one that would change her for the better. As she considered the possibility of reaching out to the officer, a sense of resolve began to build within her. Maybe, just maybe, this was a chance for her to grow and to show the community that she could change. The next morning, the mayor's wife woke up feeling heavy-hearted. She tossed and turned, unable to shake off the embarrassment from the previous day. The incident replayed in her mind like a movie on repeat. She could still hear the officer's calm voice reminding her that the law applied to everyone. Every time she thought about how she had treated him, a wave of shame washed over her. It was a feeling she wasn't used to. As she sat up in bed, she looked out the window. The sun was shining brightly, but inside, she felt cloudy and gray. Her husband had left for work early that morning, likely to deal with the fallout from her actions. She knew that their public image had taken a hit, and she felt guilty for putting him in that position. After all, he had always tried to support her and protect her from any backlash. Now she had embarrassed him in front of the entire town. After a long moment of thought, she decided she needed to take action. If she wanted to make things right, she would need to confront the situation head-on. She pulled out her phone and searched for the police station's number. It took her a few tries to dial, her fingers shaking slightly as she pressed the buttons. When someone finally answered, she introduced herself hesitantly, her voice a little softer than usual. "Hello, this is the mayor's wife. I'd like to speak with Officer Turner, please," she said, hoping he would be willing to listen to her. The dispatcher assured her that Officer Turner would return her call later, and she hung up, feeling a mix of hope and anxiety. As she waited, she decided to reflect on her behavior. She thought about how she had always prided herself on being someone who could get her way. But now she realized that this approach only pushed people away. Instead of being a figure of respect, she had become a person who others viewed with disdain. The very thought stung, making her wish she could go back in time and handle things differently. A few hours later, her phone buzzed. It was a text message from Officer Turner. "This is Officer Turner. I received your message. How can I help you?" Taking a deep breath, she typed a response. "I'd like to apologize for my behavior the other day. I acted disrespectfully, and I regret how I treated you. Can we meet to talk?" She pressed send, her heart racing. Would he agree to meet? After all, she had done her best to belittle him. But to her relief, he quickly replied, "Thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your willingness to talk. How about we meet at the coffee shop in town this afternoon?" Feeling a bit more at ease, she agreed. The rest of the day dragged on as she prepared for the meeting. She picked out her outfit carefully, wanting to present herself in a way that showed she was sincere. It wasn't about looking fancy. She simply wanted to appear genuine and approachable. When the time came, she arrived at the coffee shop early, sitting at a small table by the window. Her hands were clammy as she stirred her coffee, waiting for him to arrive. The shop was busy, filled with the sounds of chatter and laughter. It was a stark contrast to the storm of emotions inside her. Finally, the doors swung open, and Officer Turner stepped in. He was dressed in a casual shirt and jeans, looking relaxed but professional. She felt a wave of relief as he spotted her and walked over. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, forcing a smile as he took a seat. "Of course," he replied, his tone warm yet neutral. After a brief moment of awkward silence, she took a deep breath and began. "I want to sincerely apologize for how I treated you the other day. I let my ego get the best of me, and I know that was wrong. You were just doing your job." He nodded, showing understanding. "I appreciate you saying that. It takes courage to admit when we're wrong." They talked openly about the incident. She explained how her behavior had been driven by a false sense of entitlement, something she realized she needed to change. Officer Turner listened attentively, offering insights and advice based on his own experiences. He shared stories of his own challenges and the importance of treating everyone with respect, regardless of their status. As they continued to talk, she felt a sense of relief. The conversation was not just about her apologizing. It felt like a genuine exchange of ideas. By the time they finished their coffee, she realized that this meeting was the first step in her journey toward becoming a better person. Leaving the coffee shop, she felt lighter, as if the weight had been lifted off her shoulders. It wouldn't be easy to change, but she was determined to try. She knew that this experience had taught her an invaluable lesson about humility and the importance of treating others with kindness. As she walked down the street, she felt a sense of hope, believing that perhaps this was the beginning of a new chapter in her life. After her meeting with Officer Turner, the mayor's wife felt a newfound sense of determination. It was clear that she had a long way to go, but she was ready to embrace the challenge of becoming a better person. She knew that her past actions could not be erased, but she could take steps to change how she interacted with others. This realization ignited a spark within her, and she was eager to put her plans into action. As she returned home, her husband noticed a change in her demeanor. He could see the light in her eyes and the hint of a smile on her lips. "How did it go?" he asked, genuinely curious. "It went really well," she replied, her voice filled with enthusiasm. "I met with Officer Turner, and we talked for a long time. I apologized for how I acted, and he was really understanding. Her husband looked relieved, and a smile spread across his face. That's great to hear. I knew you could do it. Over dinner that night, she shared more about the conversation, explaining how the officer had spoken about the importance of respect and treating everyone equally. He made me realize how important it is to listen to others and to be mindful of how my actions affect them, she said, feeling a sense of clarity. Inspired by their conversation, she decided that she wanted to give back to the community in a more meaningful way. She thought about how she could use her influence positively, instead of letting her status make her feel above everyone else. After brainstorming for a while, she came up with an idea. She would start a community initiative focused on helping those in need, particularly the elderly and disabled residents who often struggled with daily tasks. The next day, she reached out to local organizations and community leaders, asking for their input on how to best support the residents. She learned that many people needed assistance with errands, yard work, and even companionship. The more she listened, the more she realized how many ways she could make a difference. Excited by her plans, she started organizing volunteer groups, rallying friends and neighbors to join her cause. As word spread about her new initiative, people began to take notice. The community members who once saw her as entitled and distant started to warm up to her. They appreciated her willingness to give back and her newfound humility. With each meeting and event, she felt a growing sense of belonging, something she hadn't experienced in a long time. One weekend, she organized a community cleanup day, inviting families to come together and beautify the local parks. When the date arrived, she was amazed to see so many people show up. Young children ran around with trash bags, eager to help, while adults worked side by side, chatting and laughing. The atmosphere was filled with joy and camaraderie, and she felt a sense of pride in what they were accomplishing together. During the cleanup, she took the time to speak with everyone, asking about their lives and sharing stories. She listened intently, genuinely interested in what they had to say. The experience reminded her that each person had their own story and struggles. By the end of the day, she felt closer to her community than ever before. As the months passed, her initiative grew. She created a monthly newsletter to keep everyone informed about upcoming events and volunteer opportunities. The community rallied behind her, contributing ideas and sharing their own experiences. The mayor, her husband, was supportive, helping her spread the word and encouraging others to get involved. Eventually, she set up a fund to help families in need with expenses like medical bills or home repairs. She worked closely with local charities to ensure that the money went to those who truly needed it. The feeling of making a difference filled her with happiness, and she realized how rewarding it was to help others. Through these efforts, she discovered a passion for community service that she never knew she had. She found herself waking up each day excited about what she could accomplish. No longer did she see herself as someone above the rest. Instead, she felt like a part of something bigger, a community that valued kindness and support. One afternoon, while she was volunteering at a local food bank, she spotted Officer Turner again. He was there, helping to distribute food to families in need. When he saw her, he approached her with a warm smile. "It's great to see you again. I'm really impressed with all the work you're doing," he said. "Thank you. It's been such a rewarding experience," she replied, her heart swelling with pride. They chatted for a while, and she could see the respect in his eyes. It made her realize how far she had come since their first meeting. As time went on, the mayor's wife continued to embrace her new role in the community. Every weekend, she found herself involved in various activities, from organizing food drives to helping local schools with fundraising events. She was busy, but in a way that filled her with joy. The more she gave, the more she realized how much she had been missing out on by focusing solely on her own status. One Saturday morning, she hosted a community day event in the town square. The idea was simple: bring people together for a day of fun, games, and connection. She arranged for local businesses to set up booths and for families to bring food to share. There would be activities for children, such as face painting and games, along with live music from local bands. On the day of the event, the sun shone brightly, and the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. As people started to gather, she could see families laughing, children playing, and friends chatting. It warmed her heart to witness the community come alive. She made her rounds, greeting everyone with a smile and thanking them for being there. As she walked through the crowd, she bumped into Officer Turner again. "Wow, this looks amazing," he exclaimed, taking in the lively scene. "Thank you. I'm so glad you could come." "It's all about bringing people together," she said, her enthusiasm evident. They spent some time talking, sharing stories about their lives and experiences. He opened up about his work as an officer, explaining how he had seen firsthand the struggles that some families faced. It made her appreciate even more the importance of their community initiatives. As the day continued, a local band started to play upbeat music, and people began to dance. She found herself moving to the rhythm, laughing, and enjoying the moment. She felt a sense of freedom and happiness that she hadn't felt in years. Surrounded by friendly faces, she realized how much her life had changed since she had started to give back. In the middle of the celebration, she took a moment to address the crowd. "Thank you all for coming out today. It's wonderful to see our community coming together like this. Remember, we are all stronger when we support one another." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, and she felt a rush of pride. Later that day, she noticed a group of children huddled around a table with Officer Turner. They were excitedly showing him their drawings and telling him stories. She felt a wave of happiness as she watched him engage with them, showing genuine interest in what they had to say. This was the kind of connection that mattered, the kind that could make a real difference in their lives. As the event began to wind down, the mayor's wife felt a sense of fulfillment. She had brought joy to her community, and in return, she had received so much more. She understood now that true happiness came from the connections she made with others and the impact she had on their lives. In the following weeks, she continued to work on her community initiatives, partnering with local organizations to provide workshops on job skills, financial literacy, and health awareness. Each event brought new faces and stories, and she found herself forming bonds with people she would never have met before. One evening, while planning a health fair, she received a call from a woman who had recently moved to the area. The woman explained that she wanted to get involved in the community but wasn't sure how. The mayor's wife listened carefully, offering suggestions and encouraging her to attend upcoming events. They ended up chatting for nearly an hour, and by the end of the conversation, the woman expressed her excitement to join their efforts. This was something she cherished, a chance to connect with others and help them feel welcome. She remembered her own journey and how much she had learned about kindness and humility. It felt wonderful to share that knowledge with others, helping them find their place in the community. One day, while reflecting on her journey, she realized that she had developed a strong friendship with Officer Turner. They often teamed up for community events, and she appreciated his insights and support. Together, they had created a positive influence in the town, encouraging more people to get involved and support each other. Then one afternoon, while volunteering at the local library, she overheard a group of young adults discussing their dreams and ambitions. They were passionate about their goals, but some expressed doubts about whether they could achieve them. She couldn't help but join their conversation, sharing her own story of how she had transformed her life by embracing community service. "I used to think my status was everything," she told them, her voice sincere. "But I found true fulfillment in helping others. It's okay to start small and grow from there." As the seasons changed, the mayor's wife found herself fully immersed in her community efforts. Fall had arrived, bringing with it crisp air and colorful leaves. The town was alive with festivities, and she felt a renewed sense of purpose. With each passing day, she noticed more people joining in their initiatives, and the community spirit was stronger than ever. One afternoon, while walking through the town square, she saw a flyer for a fall festival. It caught her attention, and she thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to bring the community together once more. The festival promised fun activities, food, and a chance for families to connect. Excited by the idea, she immediately began brainstorming ways to make the event memorable. She envisioned a day filled with laughter and joy. There would be pumpkin carving contests, hay rides, and even a small farmers market featuring local produce. She reached out to local farmers and artisans, inviting them to showcase their goods. The response was overwhelming. Everyone wanted to be a part of it. With her newfound confidence, she gathered a group of volunteers to help organize the festival. They met weekly, discussing plans and assigning tasks. Everyone brought their ideas to the table, and it felt great to see so many people enthusiastic about the event. It reminded her of how far they had come together as a community. As the festival date approached, she began to feel a mix of excitement and nerves. She wanted everything to go smoothly, knowing how much it meant to the families who would attend. In the days leading up to the festival, she worked tirelessly with the volunteers, setting up decorations and arranging booths. On the day of the festival, the weather was perfect. The sun shone brightly, and families started to arrive, filling the square with smiles and laughter. She felt a surge of happiness as she watched children running around, their faces painted in bright colors, and parents chatting with friends. The festival was a beautiful celebration of community, and it filled her heart with joy. As the festivities continued, she noticed Officer Turner moving through the crowd, chatting with families, and ensuring everyone was safe. They exchanged smiles, and she appreciated his support. He had become a close ally in her mission to strengthen community ties, and she was grateful for his presence. As the sun began to set, the atmosphere transformed. Strings of lights lit up the square, casting a warm glow. A local band started to play lively music, inviting people to dance. The mayor's wife couldn't resist. She joined in, laughing and dancing alongside the families. It was a moment of pure joy, a celebration of everything they had built together. During a lull in the music, she took a moment to address the crowd again. Thank you all for being here today. This festival is a reminder of how wonderful our community is. Together, we can achieve great things. The crowd erupted in cheers, and she felt an overwhelming sense of pride. As the night wore on, she moved around, speaking with families and hearing their stories. One woman shared how much she appreciated the community events and how they had helped her feel more connected. I moved here last year, and I was feeling lonely. But these events have brought me friends and a sense of belonging, she said, her eyes shining with gratitude. The mayor's wife felt touched by her words. This was what she had hoped for, a place where people could feel supported and connected. It reminded her of her own journey and how important it was to lift each other up. At the end of the festival, as the last of the lights twinkled and families began to leave, she took a moment to reflect on the day. It had been a success, not just in numbers, but in the connections made. She knew that moments like this were what truly mattered. Later that week, she received a call from the mayor. He was proud of her efforts and wanted to discuss how they could further support community programs. His encouragement meant the world to her, and she shared her vision of creating more ongoing events that focused on different aspects of community life, education, health, and the arts. Let's brainstorm together and see how we can make this happen, he said, his voice filled with enthusiasm. They scheduled a meeting to discuss ideas, and she felt a surge of excitement about the possibilities ahead. In the days that followed, she continued to engage with community members, gathering feedback and suggestions. Each conversation brought new ideas and perspectives, and she felt grateful to be part of such a vibrant community. The more she connected with others, the more she understood their needs and dreams. As winter approached, the mayor's wife found herself reflecting on the incredible journey she had taken over the past year. With the leaves falling and the air turning crisp, she felt a sense of gratitude for everything she had learned and experienced. The community had embraced her efforts, and she was determined to keep the momentum going as the holiday season approached. With the holidays just around the corner, She knew that many families in the area faced challenges. Some were struggling to put food on the table, while others worried about providing gifts for their children. This made her realize that it was the perfect time to launch a holiday drive to support those in need. She envisioned a campaign that would bring together the spirit of giving and the warmth of community. Excited by her idea, she immediately started planning. She reached out to local businesses, asking them to contribute food and gifts for families. To her delight, many of them were eager to help. They understood the importance of supporting their community during this time, and some even offered to host collection boxes in their stores. As the weeks went by, her initiative gained momentum. She organized meetings with volunteers, spreading the word about the holiday drive. Together, they brainstormed ideas for events to promote their cause. One idea was to host a holiday fair, where families could come together to enjoy festive activities while donating items for those in need. The holiday fair was scheduled for the first weekend of December, and she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She wanted everything to be perfect, but she also knew that the heart of the event was the sense of community and support it would foster. On the day of the fair, she arrived early to help set up. The town square was transformed into a winter wonderland, filled with twinkling lights and colorful decorations. Families began to arrive, bringing food items and gifts to donate. The atmosphere was filled with laughter, and the excitement of the holiday season was palpable. Throughout the day, children participated in fun activities like cookie decorating and making holiday crafts. Local musicians played cheerful music, adding to the festive spirit. As she moved through the crowd, she felt a sense of joy. Families were connecting, sharing stories, and creating memories together. Later in the afternoon, she took a moment to address the crowd. "Thank you all for being here today. Your generosity will help so many families in our community this holiday season. Together, we are making a real difference." The crowd cheered, and she felt a surge of warmth and gratitude. After the speeches, a local choir performed holiday songs, and everyone joined in, singing along. The joy was infectious, and she couldn't help but smile as she watched families come together, feeling a sense of belonging and unity. As the day came to a close, she looked at the donations they had collected. It was a mountain of food, clothes, and toys that would bring joy to many families. She felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that their hard work had paid off. In the following weeks, she and the volunteers sorted through the donations, ensuring that everything went to the right families. They worked closely with local charities to distribute the items, and it was heartwarming to see the smiles on the faces of those receiving help. One evening, while packing up boxes, she received a call from a single mother who had just moved to the area. She was overwhelmed and didn't know how she would provide for her children during the holidays. Listening to her story, the mayor's wife felt a deep sense of compassion. She assured the mother that they were there to help. "Please don't worry," she said gently. "We have plenty of food and gifts, and we want to make sure your family has a wonderful holiday. Just let us know what you need." The mother's voice cracked with emotion as she thanked her, and in that moment, the mayor's wife realized how impactful their work was. On Christmas Eve, she organized a special gathering at the community center. They invited families to come and enjoy a warm meal together, share stories, and celebrate the spirit of the season. The room was filled with laughter and happiness, and it warmed her heart to see people from all walks of life coming together. During the event, she noticed a little girl sitting quietly in a corner, looking a bit shy. She approached her, kneeling down to be at eye level. "Hi there. What's your name?" she asked with a warm smile. The girl looked up, her eyes wide, and after a moment, she whispered her name. "Would you like to join us for some games?" she asked, hoping to make her feel more comfortable. The girl nodded, and soon they were playing games with other children. It was a beautiful moment, and she felt grateful to be part of creating joy for this young girl. As the new year rolled in, the mayor's wife felt a renewed sense of energy and purpose. The holidays had been a whirlwind of activity, filled with joy and gratitude, and now she was ready to take on new challenges. She spent the first few days of January reflecting on the past year and all the connections she had made in the community. It was clear to her that there was still much work to do, and she was eager to dive in. One evening, she gathered her volunteers for a meeting to discuss plans for the year ahead. They met at the community center, a cozy space filled with the warmth of familiar faces. As everyone settled in, she felt a sense of excitement in the air. She wanted to hear their ideas and suggestions for how to continue building on their success. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice full of enthusiasm. "Last year was amazing, and I can't wait to see what we can accomplish together this year. What are some initiatives you think we should focus on?" The room buzzed with energy as people shared their thoughts. One volunteer suggested starting a mentorship program for young people in the community. Another proposed a series of workshops on financial literacy to help families manage their budgets better. Everyone had ideas, and the discussions flowed freely. As they brainstormed, she noticed how engaged everyone was. It was clear that the work they had done had sparked a fire in the hearts of many. They were no longer just volunteers. They had become a tight-knit community dedicated to making a difference. After much discussion, they decided to focus on 3 main initiatives: a mentorship program, financial literacy workshops, and a community garden to promote healthy eating. Each idea had the potential to create lasting change, and everyone left the meeting feeling inspired and motivated. The following weeks were busy as they set their plans in motion. For the mentorship program, they reached out to local schools and organizations to recruit both mentors and mentees. The response was overwhelming. Many people wanted to give back and share their experiences with younger generations. As the program kicked off, she found herself attending various events to introduce mentors to their mentees. It was heartwarming to watch the connections forming. Young people were paired with mentors who could guide them in their career choices, help with schoolwork, and provide support during difficult times. It felt fulfilling to see the impact of their efforts. Simultaneously, they organized the financial literacy workshops. They invited local experts to lead sessions on budgeting, saving, and investing. The workshops were well attended, with families eager to learn how to better manage their finances. During one session, a woman approached her with tears in her eyes. "I never thought I could save for my children's future. Thank you for this opportunity," she said, her voice filled with emotion. It was moments like this that reminded her why they did what they did. The community garden project also gained traction. They found a piece of land that had been unused for years and began transforming it into a vibrant space for everyone to enjoy. Volunteers gathered on weekends to plant vegetables, flowers, and herbs. The energy was infectious as families worked side by side, learning about gardening and the benefits of healthy eating. One Saturday, while digging in the soil, she spotted a group of children excitedly planting seeds. They giggled and chatted as they worked, eager to see what would grow. She joined them, kneeling beside them and talking about the different plants. "You know, each plant needs love and care, just like we do," she said, smiling at their curiosity. As spring approached, the garden flourished. It became a gathering place for families, where they could learn about sustainable practices and enjoy fresh produce. The mayor's wife organized a harvest festival to celebrate their hard work. It would be a day filled with fun activities, food tastings, and community spirit. As the date of the festival approached, the excitement grew. Families were invited to bring their favorite dishes made from the vegetables they had grown in the garden. There would be games for children, live music, and booths where local artisans could showcase their crafts. She wanted it to be a day that brought everyone together to celebrate their accomplishments. When the day finally arrived, the sun shone brightly, and the community center buzzed with energy. Families came together, bringing dishes that showcased the fruits of their labor. The table was filled with colorful salads, hearty soups, and delicious desserts. The aroma filled the air, drawing everyone in.